Hi, I'm Chip Rogers, and welcome to the AAHOA Educational Experience. You got a treat for you today, and that is we're talking social media and mobile media. And my guests today, I will introduce them, are experts in this field. And over the next few weeks, we'll be looking at how these particular topics can help you and solve some headaches and perhaps even grow your business. I'll start with my first guest, Pedro Colaco. He is the president and CEO of Guest Centric. Pedro, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Next to him is Josiah Mackenzie, director of business development with Review Pro. Thanks for being with us, Josiah.
Thank you.
And Quinn is the CEO for Tnooz, which can be found at tnooz.com. So, gentlemen, everybody knows that, they hear this term social media. And with anything that I think involves technology, over time, that term probably means, number one, it means different things to different people. It probably actually changes form over time. In your best summation, what is social media? We'll start with you, Pedro.
Social media is a way for people to interact and have conversations online. And obviously the best known social media outlet is Facebook. But there's obviously other social media elements like Twitter and so on. In travel specifically, I think, social media has been around for quite a bit. There's a website called TripAdvisor, which actually just spun out of Expedia, and where people publish their reviews of their experiences in hotels. So social media is really a way for people to entertain conversations around the experiences that they have while traveling. That's really what's important.
And Josiah, when we hear the term social media, I think a lot of people, the first thing they think of is, well, that means Facebook. But it actually means a lot more than Facebook. And while Facebook is obviously enormous, there were some other large social media companies just a few years ago that aren't quite as big as they used to be. So this thing changes, but it's more than just Facebook, right?
It's more than Facebook. The landscape is changing very, very quickly. I think it's good to go back to the definition of social media being digital communication where consumers are creating and sharing content with each other. So that changes very, very quickly. That landscape changes, and it's really up to hotels to be up to speed on what's going on in the environment and how they need to react and respond to that.
And later, whether it be in this segment or another show, we're going to talk about that, is that it is quite a task to stay on the cutting edge,
Yes.
and maybe a task that you might not want to do yourself. You may want to have somebody else do it. We'll talk about that. But Gene, I wanted to get your opinion on it as well. Social media, it's not just, Facebook is big, 700, 800 million users, but as Pedro is pointing out, there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, social media can be broken down into its two terms. Everybody focuses on the media side of it, where how the problems in that create opportunities or threats to my business, management problems for my business, growth problems for my business. But the part that you can't ever divorce from that is the social part. Human beings are inherently social critters. They've always had conversations. They've always sent smoke signals or drum beats or telephone calls. What differentiates this is the type of media that gives them the power. And that's digital media that's ubiquitous, round the clock, geographically seamless, and their ability to say trivial things like what I'm having for lunch to help change the world as we know it through citizen journalism or political movements run that entire continuum. And that's what makes it complex.
And I guess when I look at it, you guys are the experts, but the internet came along and it was a platform to deliver data, an easy way to get information. But as you said, then you have human beings that they're social beings, and some very, very wealthy people now said, well, why don't we use this platform to connect people? And then you have really, and I think that's really what you guys do, you take giving the data, giving the information, connecting people to enterprise through a social platform, and that's kind of has all become married into 3-4 years ago, Facebook was big. It was so grandmothers can get a hold of grandchildren. But every business uses Facebook now. Every business uses Twitter now. And if you're not using it, the fact of the matter is you're going to be left behind.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about this is sometimes when making your decision on where to go, where to stay, where to eat, you may trust anonymous information from the internet more than your circle of friends, which is quite interesting. right? So you may go on TripAdvisor, or if you're booking through Booking.com or through Hotels.com or whatever, look at their reviews, look at the experiences that people had, look at what they said. You don't know them from any place, but you're gonna kind of read it with a grain of salt and say, yeah, this is a place I'd like to stay, or this is a place I wouldn't like to stay in. And that's the power of, you know, big crowds generating lots of content makes really big business changes. And if you as a business are not on top of that, it's going to be very difficult to manage your reputation, for instance, because your reputation is online whether you like it or not.
Right. I'm going to follow up on that a little bit, Josiah. There are some industries that seem well suited for using social media, maximizing social media to their benefit. Some may not be quite as well suited, but it seems like the hospitality industry is perfectly suited. Could you talk a little bit about that?
It is perfectly suited because what we find in travel, consumers are willing and excited about sharing their experience with their friends. They want to brag about all the cool places they've been to. They want to talk about the cool things that they've done. And so there's this unique environment where people are wanting to share photos. They want to write about their trip experiences. So for travel businesses, the huge opportunity is out there because there's all this user-generated content. If you look at it the right way, you can understand in aggregate, what are your customer base, what do they like about you? What are they looking for? You can get a lot of business intelligence by looking at that, and then in really making decisions to guide marketing in other areas of your operations based on that feedback and based on what consumers are saying.
If I could just comment as well. When a consumer searches for a trip or considers making a trip, or whether it's a business person, there's a moment in which they search for an experience they'd like to have. Then there's another moment in which they shop for where they might like to go and how much they'd like to spend. Then they transact or book the trip. Then they take the trip. And while in the trip or after the trip, they want to share. Everybody wants to show you a picture of their vacation. It used to be sitting in your in-laws' living room and watching slideshows of how I spent my summer vacation. Now it's instantaneous. The best use of social media for a hospitality organization, as Josiah and Pedro indicated, is to tap into that sharing side. There's a very positive side to that. It's not all about reputation management and negative feelings. It's about how excited people are to share their experience as social creatures that they are. And that's the best use of social media for a business, to use it as part of the way you market your product.
And if I could just add one thing to that, what I think is really important to understand is that the way consumers want to engage with companies and with each other is going to evolve as they go through that travel process. At first it's at the dreaming stage where they may be looking for inspiration on where to visit. Then they proceed through the booking stages where they're looking for validation based on consumer created content that they're going to make a good choice. And then after the trip they want to share that information. So as a business it's critical to understand each of these aspects and then how you might engage at each of those stages.
And it brings to mind for me the fact that the average traveler now is a lot more sophisticated, or at least has a lot more information at their fingertips. I mean, you
know that Google has studies on that and says that people go through 19, 20, sometimes 23 websites before they actually book. So that just tells you, the amount of time that people spend researching and trying to find the best deal and the right fit for them.
Well, that says at least two things. It means that you have to be, in it to have a chance of winning it, to have people come to your property and acquire a customer, but there's an enormous potential here, as Josiah and Pedro both mentioned, to retain a customer. So if you're as sophisticated as your customers are, you can help draw them in the first time and keep them in for multiple high margin repeat experiences.
We've got to take a break, but when we come back, I do want to begin the process of what do you do when you sit down with a hotelier, and how do you start that process of and who ought to be doing this? I think I know the answer to that. We'll talk about that. But and is there anyone who shouldn't be doing this? We'll talk about that as well. So we'll take a quick time out and we'll be back right after this. Welcome back to the AAHOA Educational Experience. We're talking about social media, and soon we'll get into mobile media. And my guest this week, Pedro Colaco, is President and CEO of Guest Centric. Next to him is Josiah Mackenzie, who is the Director of Business Development for Review Pro. And Quinn is the CEO for Tnooz.com. That's N-O-O-Z, Tnooz.com. How'd you come up with that name, Gene, by the way?
My wife thought it up.
The best ideas always come from the spouse, right?
5 letters, sort of sounds like Google, sort of sounds like Yahoo. I challenge you to get a 5-letter URL in this day and age on the
It's
internet.
very difficult.
That's another topic for another day. That's a good idea.
That's right.
But all right, so maybe there's a hotelier out there who says, I don't need this. This isn't going to make any difference. I'll just continue to put up my billboards on the interstate and hope people stop by. That is obviously a recipe for disaster.
I think that there's actually a lot of people think of that way, not only a few. But whether hoteliers like it or not, people are talking about them on the internet, and they may be saying good things, which there are studies that show that more than 85 or 86% of reviews typically are positive reviews, so people want to share positive experiences. But there's also people saying bad things, and some of those things can escalate if not addressed immediately. So I think yes, I think that somebody that says I don't want to be in social media, one is ignoring a huge opportunity to reach out to consumers and to kind of educate them on the benefits of staying with them or their unique value proposition. And on the other hand, there's also the risk of somebody actually bad-mouthing the business and actually creating some negative vibes that are not necessary.
That is a great point. And Josiah, I want you to follow up on that if you can, and that is the fact that if you're a hotel owner, your business is already engaged in social media, whether you know it or whether you like it. The question is, are you yourself going to do something about it? Because, as Pedro pointed out, people will be talking about your property, and that information is going to be out there. Are you going to engage that or not, I guess is the question. And if you don't, I guess you're in trouble.
Right. It's really important to understand what social media is and is not. It really is more of a communications revolution than a business revolution. And the good news for hotels there is that they can extend these amazing concepts of customer service and giving the guest a great experience on their property, given the context of their hotel brand. But think about how to bring that experience online. How do you use new digital channels to serve the guest at each point of the travel process? And so that's the big opportunity, thinking about how do you take the principles of hospitality and make it work in a digital age.
And Gene, the industry as a whole, I like to think about things this way. It's not like we're going to go backwards. It's not like tomorrow this thing's going away and you're going to go back to the days of just putting up billboards. I mean, this is something that is growing exponentially. And as we talked about earlier, it's changing almost nonstop. I mean, I know you cover the entire industry, but where were we, where are we, and where are we going?
Well, if you just take the big kid on the block, Facebook. When Facebook started, it was a yearbook online. I mean, it was much more sophisticated than that, but essentially it was a college-based startup. I believe it started on the campus of Harvard and slowly evolved out into the other college communities among 37 or 38 colleges in Boston. But fast forward 5-6 years, and now it's 900 million people around the planet. So if you just look at that narrow span of time and all of what has happened in travel, such as the emergence of a Chinese middle class traveling public or a subcontinent of India traveling public, and see how social media has penetrated those marketplaces as well, you have to tie into the strategy and the operational mechanics that this dizzying pace of change is business as usual. So that change is with us. We're not going to not have that with us anymore. So you need to figure out how to turn that into an opportunity, not how to keep chasing it as a problem that you wish would go away.
And if you think about it, hotels have always done deals, right? They've published them on catalogs with tour operators. They've published them on billboards, whatever, right? So it definitely is a great way to reach out to consumers and to say, hey, if you give me something, I'll give you something in return. And people are engaging that way, with sweepstakes and with all sorts of things that are happening on social media. And that's yet another opportunity to go capture some new business that may not come your way if you don't do anything about it, and it'll go to somebody else, obviously.
Yeah, they're going somewhere.
Yeah.
And Josiah, talk to us about, you sit down with a hotelier and work with them. Where do you start? I mean, for the guy who says, look, I know I got to be doing this, but I've got no clue. How do you start with them?
Well, there needs to be a business case for every new technology that's being invested and being implemented, so it's really critical to understand what's the strategy and the objectives of the organization. From there, you can go back and understand what technologies are going to fit into that strategy. What we really recommend is understanding key performance indicators for the technology that you're going to implement, and how are you going to measure success, trying a lot of small pilot projects, and at a low cost, seeing what is going to work and resonate with your audience, and then invest in those winners. That's a model that we've seen work again and again in organizations of all sizes around the world.
That is a great point. I want to go back to you for a second, Pedro, on this. Depending on your business strategy and your business itself, that predicates what is going to happen with your social media, because the same social media plan doesn't work for the single hotel boutique in New York City as it does the corporate hotel in Omaha. I mean, that's
right, and it definitely depends on your brand, because if you have a large brand, obviously you're more able to create brand ambassadors that are actually going to be able to, populate the social media with good news about your brand. If you have a small independent hotel, it's a little bit more difficult, but it's still possible. So really, when we sit down with the hotel managers, we tell them, okay, so you want to be in social media. Let's discuss, why do you want to be in social media? You want to, because everybody else is on there, but I understand that, but do you want to generate new business? Okay, so if you want to generate new business, do you want to be on Facebook? Do you want to be on Twitter? We sit down with them and we actually go through the list of outlets that they can be in and say, okay, if you, just as an example, if you want to be on Facebook, you got to do something inside Facebook. There's lots. The good thing about the internet is that everything is measurable. So we can see exactly how many people go out of Facebook, for instance, back to the official website of the hotel, and they're minimal. So when people are on Facebook, they're on Facebook. And if a hotel wants to work a Facebook strategy, they've got to work it inside Facebook. So there's a multitude of options that they have to do that in terms of products that they can install and all sorts of different things that they can do. But really, going back to what Josiah was saying, it's really about, why do you want to be on social media? Are you just trying to be there with a minimal presence to ensure that nobody's saying bad things about you? That's one strategy. Or are you actually want to use this as an acquisition channel, and that's a different strategy?
Gene?
Let me give you a very specific example. Whether you're a large hotel brand or a small mom and pop operation, you probably have some friend get a friend or friends and family offers that you'll extend. Stay in my hotel and tell anybody on the street to stay in my hotel, and I'll give you $10 a night off. That is one of the easiest programs in the world to transfer to a social media strategy. You just have you suggest in ways of talking to the person as they check out, or in signage in their room, or in your follow-up thank you to them when they get home. Make sure you tell your friends, if they stay with me in the next 3 months, they'll get $10 off their room. And you have a social media program. It's very basic, and as Josiah said, it's the kind of thing that can be tied into your exact business strategy by just using another channel of distribution to get that word out.
Right.
I think that's an interesting way to gain initial traction in social media. I would also be looking at ways that you can grow top-line revenue, though, and cut costs, so that social media isn't an expense for the sake of adopting a new technology, but it actually feeds into your business. So look at all the areas where you're spending money, look if there's more efficiencies that can be created with social technologies, and then also look at new revenue-generating opportunities. At ReviewPro, we do stuff in regards to pricing based on social media guest satisfaction, whether it's optimizing distribution or looking at increasing conversion rates. Look at opportunities there, so it's not, I have to be on Facebook, I'm going to have to give up another $10 per room to take advantage of that opportunity. I feel like there's very strong opportunities by taking an analytical approach and to improve the business results.
I think that's a great point. In our next show, and this is a tease for everyone to watch again next week, but I do want to talk about that, because I think sometimes you may have a hotel owner who's not experienced in this, who believes, okay, this is just another expense for me when I'm already right at my margins, when in reality, this is an opportunity to use a technology to lower the expenses that you already have and maximize revenue, which of course should be the goal of every act that you take, right?
That's right.
So in our next show, I want to talk about that, because for those who are hesitant to enter the world of social media, the mindset has got to be, here's an opportunity, not just something else I've got to do because everyone else is doing it. All right, we are out of time this week, but as you can see, Great topic. We're going to continue talking about it next week. Make sure to join us. For my guest, Gene Quinn, who is the CEO of Tnooz.com, and Josiah Mackenzie with Review Pro, and Pedro Colaco with Guest-Centric. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. And we'll be back with you again next week as we continue to talk about social media and mobile apps that can also be used and that you should be engaged in. I'm Chip Rogers. Make sure to, if you have any questions, just send me an email, chip@ahoa.com. That's chip@ahoa.com. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again next week.